Step 3 of our 10-step strategy is to identify your team. And in this video, I want to talk about things like the size of your team, who should be on your team, and the roles that should be made up on your team. So first, when we're thinking about size, what's really cool about this opportunity is there's really endless opportunities. When we're talking about street evangelism, personal evangelism, digital evangelism, church evangelism, really there's endless opportunities. God is bringing millions of people to us. There's going to be billions of people who are interested in the World Cup online. There are going to be people who come who we're just not able to reach. So it's really an endless opportunity. So the size of your team really needs to be based on the dynamics of your church or ministry setting and the gifting that's available to you in those settings. I would say, though, that it's really important that your team is big enough, though, to send out people in pairs. I mean, when we think about Jesus in Mark 6, this is his strategy. And when we think about that strategy, probably a lot of it had to do with practicality. I mean, when one person goes by themselves, it's easy to get discouraged. A partner provides opportunities for encouragement, but also safety is really, really important. When we're engaging in urban settings, as we experienced when we went down to San Diego, like we had interactions with a homeless guy who wanted to steal our phone, right? And we had interactions in the parking lot that were difficult. Like having a partner keeps us safe, it keeps us above reproach, and it's what Jesus did. And we would highly suggest that whatever the size of your team, that you at least are able to send people out at least in pairs. So next, like who should be on your team? I honestly only really think there are two criteria that a person has to have to be a team member. And one, I think they need to be Christians. I mean, we're going out representing Christ to people who desperately need him. It's important that the people know Jesus. And ultimately, we're hoping that this strategy cultivates a lot of conversation. So we want people who can have conversations about Jesus. And the second thing is we want people who are going to be able to represent Christ well. People are going to have a love for people, a level of humility and emotional intelligence about how to interact with people in a way that doesn't bring reproach to Christ, but really brings glory to Christ. And then third, what roles do we need on our team? You know, one of the main role many of you might be thinking about is the role of evangelizer, and that's for sure. We need people who are strong at sharing the gospel, but not everybody has to be strong at sharing the gospel. There are many other roles that are going to be needed on your team. I can think of like prayers. You know, as we've talked about in these videos already, like the success of our strategy isn't going to depend ultimately on how strategic we were or how eloquent we are, but it's going to depend on the Spirit. So we need people who are on teams whose their main role is to pray, whether or not they're congregating in homes or at churches, praying when the event's happening, or they're going with you to the venue sites, and their main job is just to pray. We are also going to need people on teams who are just organizing the logistics, bringing the water, organizing dinner, dropping people off at the right locations. We need people who are going to observe but can be supporters. You know, sometimes when we go out and we share the gospel, there is opportunities for discouragement. So I think people on the team whose main role is encourager. So when you're thinking about your team and the team dynamics, yes, you should be thinking about people who are strong, gifted, and able to share the gospel, but you need to be thinking about people who can do a variety of other roles as well. You know, you don't have to be an expert at soccer to be on a team. You know what I mean? Now, I would say that knowing a little bit about soccer is helpful. I experienced when we went down to San Diego that having a soccer shirt opened up conversations, and having an awareness of some things that are happening in soccer, like in the Champions League and the English Premier League, it really brought some barriers down, but it wasn't a prerequisite. So we don't need to be soccer experts to do this. We also don't need to have PhDs in world religions, right? It's like if you're going to go to a Moroccan game where most of the people are Muslim, you don't need to have a PhD in Islam or world religions to be able to go and engage those people. You also don't need to be bilingual. Now, clearly, all of these things can be helpful, like being a soccer expert, being bilingual, knowing about world religions can certainly be helpful, but they're not prerequisites. When we're thinking about who should be on the team, we really are talking about Christians who can represent Christ well. We need you to wisely and prayerfully think about the dynamics of your ministry setting. But as you do, yes, think about those who are gifted in evangelism. When we look at scripture, we see that Paul seems to have been the chief speaker. We learned that in Acts 14. But Paul didn't go by himself. He had Barnabas, who we know was the encourager. So we want to encourage you to think through all of the roles that need to be occupied on your team as you engage in this third step, which is to identify your teammates.